wears his opinions on his body. Before I give up that fellow's name, we're going to run a video, and it's going to tell you all about Billboard Chris Elston. Thank you very much.
So my name is Chris Elston. I'm known as Billboard Chris, and I'm traveling the country, literally hanging out on street corners and going to busy events, going to wherever the people are, just to have conversations about gender ideology, mainly medical harm that is coming to kids when they want to switch their sex. Because we have children who are being indoctrinated either in school or primarily on social media as well, to believe that it is stereotypes that determine their sex or their gender. So overwhelmingly, it is supportive. At least I would say 9 out of 10 people support what I'm doing. People know instinctively this is wrong. We should be letting children grow up because it's not stereotypes that define who they are. And if a child is gender non-conforming, we should just encourage that. That's fine. You don't need pharmaceutical drugs, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries to find your true inner self. But people understand this. People are supportive. It's just most of the supportive people are quiet. I'm just going to keep traveling the country, keep having these conversations, because I know eventually we win this battle. It's just a question of how much damage is done to children before that happens.
You're getting me emotional already. So my name's Chris. I've been on a unique mission for a little over 3 years to raise awareness about what I consider to be the greatest child abuse scandal in modern medicine history. Our national treasure, David Menzies, just did a phenomenal job exposing the absurdity of all of this. But unfortunately, this goes beyond just the absurd, and it goes into tremendous child abuse. In North America, and back when this video was shot, I was just traveling Canada, but since the borders opened up, I've been traveling into the US, and I'm traveling across the world now as well. But in North America, more than 300,000 children have been diagnosed with this condition called gender dysphoria, which is essentially just self-loathing. These kids want to switch their sex. And it's primarily girls. It's girls when they're getting into middle school, getting into high school, where, shocker, it can be a tough time. Puberty's not always the most fun thing in the world. And these kids are being led to believe that the source of their discomfort is that they were born wrong. They were born in the wrong body. What does that even mean? Nobody can tell you. I've been out on the streets for more than 2,500 hours and at university campuses, having one conversation at a time to raise awareness about this scandal. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, not one person in this world can tell you what it means to be born in the wrong body, because there is no such thing. There is no such thing as a transgender child. They're called girls and boys. And the positive message we should be sending is that they're beautiful just as they are. No drugs or scalpels needed. But Canada, unfortunately, under our authoritarian dictator, Justin Trudeau, we are the epicenter for this trans insanity across the Western world. What does it mean to have a gender identity? Guess what? We don't have one. But our kids are being indoctrinated on social media and in schools to believe that they are. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is the genderbread person. It's a gingerbread man, but you don't want to give it a gendered name, of course. And it defines your gender identity right on there as being based on your personality, your job, hobbies, likes, dislikes, roles in society, and expectations upon you. Tell me, what does your job have to do with your gender? I'm born in 75. When I grew up, we kind of got away from all these stereotypes and we taught our girls they can be whatever they want to be when they grow up. And they can be, they just can't be a man. But this is all stereotypical nonsense. Your hobbies? What the heck's that got to do with your gender? How many women here were tomboys growing up? Congratulations, you're all transgender. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from one of the greatest experts in the world. Boston Children's Hospital is the #1 number one ranked pediatric hospital in the United States of America. Actually, they're number 2 now. And I'd like to think I had a part in that downgrade. But last year, in August of 2022, I tweeted out one of their own videos that their gender clinic had produced about how they perform gender-affirming hysterectomies at the Children's Hospital. And we'll get to that video in a second. But this video started to take off. It was getting a lot of views. Some media were picking it up. And I thought to myself, I'd better record this. It was from Boston Children's Hospital's own YouTube channel. I thought I'd better record this because they're probably going to delete it. Sure enough, that night they deleted it. So I tweeted out my recorded version. I sent it to Libs of TikTok, this popular account on Twitter. I sent it to Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, the guy who made the great film, What is a Woman? They retweeted it for me. And this video went viral because people, I think, knew that there were weird things going on in these gender clinics at these children's hospitals, but they didn't really understand exactly how ghoulish this was. But this first video here is from the director of the Gender Multi-Specialty Clinic, the top-ranked gender clinic in the world, probably. So let's hear from her what it means to be transgender.
A child will often know that they are transgender from the moment that they have any ability to express themselves, and parents will often tell us this. We have parents who tell us that their kids, they knew from the minute they were born practically, and actions like refusing to get a haircut or standing to urinate, or trying to stand to urinate, refusing to stand to urinate, trying on siblings' clothing, playing with the quote opposite gender toys, things like that. There is more and more a group of adolescents that we are seeing that really are coming to the realization that they might be trans or gender diverse a little bit later on in their life. So what we're seeing from them is that they always sort of knew something was maybe off and didn't have the understanding to know that they might be trans or have a different gender identity than the one they had been assigned. So that is a growing population that we are seeing, and that's being recognized as being trans and able to be treated.
No big deal. If you're playing with the wrong toys, you can be treated for that. If you're a little girl that pees standing up because you got some big brothers and it looks fun, and I can attest it is fun. Well, gosh, maybe she's transgender. If a little boy has some big sisters, shocker, they're going to play dress up with their little baby brother. That doesn't make him a girl. Let's go to the next video, please. And I'm going to cut this one short because I can't stomach all of it, so I'll tell you when.
So most of the patients that we have in the GEMS clinic actually know their gender, usually around the age of puberty, but a good portion of children do know as early as seemingly from the womb, and they will usually express it.
You gotta laugh at some of this stuff. Seemingly from the womb. Children know they're transgender. Are there transgender fetuses? I bet the Democrats wouldn't be okay with aborting them in the 9th month of pregnancy. This is totally insane. Let's go to the next video, please.
Gender-affirming hysterectomy is very similar to most hysterectomies that occur. A hysterectomy itself is the removal of the uterus, the cervix, which is the opening of the uterus, and the fallopian tubes, which are attached to the sides of the uterus. Some gender-affirming hysterectomies will also include the removal of the ovaries, but that's technically a separate procedure called a bilateral oophorectomy. And not every gender-affirming hysterectomy includes that, and people who are getting gender-affirming hysterectomies do not have to have their ovaries removed.
Well, isn't that a relief? This is a children's hospital. And it's not the only one. Tens of thousands of children, thousands and thousands of children in Canada are going to these gender clinics at your local children's hospital. There are waiting lists. The demand is so high. Just this week, you can look this up on your phones afterwards, the Children's Hospital of Winnipeg announced, and they're proud of this. This is their own press release on Twitter. There's a 10-year-old boy who wants to transition. Now, in their own write-up, they mention that he's concerned that he's not going to be able to have babies in the future. But that's okay, because he has dreams of being a world-famous actress when he's older, and he won't have time for babies anyway. This is a poor little 10-year-old boy with crazy parents who's been deceived to believe that he's really a girl. And crazy parents are going along with it. But where there's no excuse for any of this is when the health care officials go along with this. Not only do they go along with it, they push it. A bill passed in Canada last year. It's called Bill C4. It passed unanimously. Now, I don't know if the member of parliament that was here earlier is still here, but Bill C4 made it a crime for any of you to convince your child or your grandchild that they're a boy, if they're a boy, or if they're a girl. It's okay to convince your little girl that she's really a boy and turn her into a lifelong pharmaceutical patient. It's not okay if she's been indoctrinated at school or online. It's not okay to object to sterilizing your own child and to help her feel comfortable with her sex. That's now called conversion therapy, and you can go to jail for 5 years or get a $2 million fine. This passed unanimously. Formerly, this was Bill C6. And when the election was called in 2021, all bills die, of course, so that bill never passed. It had already passed the House. It hadn't yet passed the Senate. At that time, I think it was 62 Conservatives voted against it, about 50 voted for it, and of course all the other parties voted for it. One of the Conservatives who voted for it was Pierre Poilievre. Pierre's got some work to do on this issue. A lot of people just have faith that when he gets elected, he's going to fix all these issues. Well, only one time, and it was just about a week ago, has he ever even mentioned the words gender ideology. He's been trying to walk this fine line on this issue, and it's not good enough, because thousands of kids are being harmed. We flew the flag at half-mast for about 9 months based off a hoax of Indigenous children who were murdered at residential schools and buried in mass graves. A total hoax. Indigenous kids today are getting sterilized and no one says a thing about it. In British Columbia, there's one psychologist named Wallace Wong. He gave a talk at the Vancouver Public Library a few years ago. He works for the BC Ministry of Children and Family Development. He said he's personally transitioning more than 1,000 children, including more than 500 in state care. There are only 6,000 kids in state care in BC. Almost 10% of them are being transitioned by one psychologist. Guess what? 52% of all children in state care in Canada are Indigenous. Today, this country, our children's hospitals, are sterilizing and mutilating Indigenous children, but no one has the courage to say a thing about it. Shameful. So I need everyone with a connection to their MP to make some noise, because this isn't made up. We have receipts for all of this. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so pause it for 1 sec. So that man on the right there is Marcy Bowers. He says he's a woman. He is the president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. This is the organization that writes the standards of care that our children's hospitals claim to follow. They can follow. There's really no rules for any of this. It's the Wild West of medicine. But he's the president. And in the middle of that is Johanna Olsen Kennedy. She is the person who runs the gender clinic at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, the busiest one in North America. She received a grant a few years ago for $5.7 million where they could conduct research into giving the opposite sex's hormones to 8-year-olds, provided they were already entering puberty. The only kids that really entering puberty at 8 would be girls, so they're giving testosterone to 8-year-old girls. These people are ghouls. This is evil. This is a cult that has permeated all of society. But here is Marcy Bowers talking about giving puberty blockers to boys at what is called Tanner Stage 2. So Tanner Stage 2 is the scientific term for the beginning of puberty. For girls, this is when their breasts first start to form. It's probably 2 years before they've had their first period. So they're gonna be 9, 10. Boys are gonna be a year or two later. Now listen to what he says. Let's go.
The second was an observation that I had, that every single child or adolescent who is truly blocked at Tanner Stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero. These are just assigned male at birth, so trans feminine, and it's because they never in their lives are exposed to testosterone. That doesn't change. So blockers prevent the rise of testosterone, and they don't really go on testosterone at or around surgery or into adulthood. And so we don't know. They're going to have this sensation. There's no question about that. But are they going to be able to achieve sexual satisfaction? It's important in relationships, and I know that from my work with female genital mutilation survivors, that the lack of being able to be intimate with a partner is very important. And so this is what really raised the red flag for me, is to say, look, we need to have our eyes open about it. I think it's been beneficial talking about it. I know Joe and many others have reported to me, they've changed their approach a little bit in their informed consent models, and that we're talking about masturbation now. We're talking about, okay, that's an area of the body that's got very dysphoric for you, but you know what? It's all a penis is just a large clitoris. I mean, it's all the same material. It really is. So use it for the pleasurable purposes, partially that it was intended, and we'll see what happens. But these are to be answered questions. So can we avoid puberty and get good adult results? And secondly, how do we assure someone that they're going to be able to be sexually responsive? Do we remove the blockers during the course of